Oh, I was muted. Okay, welcome back to IFX Immigration Partner. Today, our webinar will focus on how to choose between EB1 or EB2, and then how to craft a very strong proposed endeavor, because your proposed endeavor is very, very important in writing a very strong EB1 or EB2 petition. So let's dive right into it as I share my slides with you guys. I want to share my slides with you. Okay, welcome back again to this webinar. Today we are looking at how to choose between EB-1A and EB-2 NIW, and how to choose the right path, and how to craft a winning petition. And crafting a winning petition starts with you getting or crafting a very strong proposed endeavor after choosing which classification works best for you. So you see, if you choose the wrong classification, then that will determine whether you get a RFE or whether your petition gets denied or approved. So it is very, very important to make the right decision, make the right call to choose whether you want to go for EB1 or EB2. And sometimes I have also seen people, clients, who decide to file for both. So today's floor is how to decide whether to go for EB1 or EB2, and then we'll look at the diagnostic framework. Then later we do a deep dive into EB1 and EB2 criteria. We also look at the EB2 NIW Danaza prongs, and then I will teach you how to craft a winning proposed endeavor, and then we'll look at real cases and biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to doing EB1 and EB2. So how do you choose between EB1 or EB2? How do you make that determination? So now, if your evidence signals that you have major awards, or you have prizes for excellence, you have media coverage or major publication about your work, or you have been invited to judge the work of others, you have salary that shows that you are at the top of your field nationally, then you need to go for EB1. If, for example, you have made you have made original contributions cited by others, or you have led or performed in leading or critical positions for organizations that have a distinguished reputation, then I will advise you to go for EB1. Can you guys see my screen? Or someone is saying my screen is blank. Can you see my screen? Uh, okay, let me try something. Can you see my screen now? I think everything should be okay now. Please let me know. I'm looking at the chart here. Oh, I think the screen is. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Oh, I think the screen. Okay, good. I think everything should be good now. So we're talking about how do you choose between EB1 and EB2? How do you make that determination? Because you see, choosing the right category, choosing the right classification is very important and will determine whether your petition is approved or your petition is denied. So the key diagnostic question that you need to answer is, can you show objective external recognition of your standing in the field? Okay, if for example you have major awards or prizes for excellence, you have media coverage about your work, you have been invited to judge the work of others through peer review and panel judging activities, you have a salary that is very high compared to your colleagues, you have led or performed leading and critical roles for organizations with a distinguished reputation, you have scholarly articles, or you have made original contributions, yes, you need to go for EB1. But the evidence that signal that you need to go for EB2 is this: your work has broad national impact, you are in STEM, health, policy, or education field, you have an advanced degree, a master's or a PhD, you can articulate a compelling US endeavor, you have your national interest argument is strong, or you have your recognition is modest but your work is critical, then you need to go for EB2. So these two distinctions are very, very important and very, very critical. Now, there are three factors that drive this decision. If you want to know whether you need to go for EB1 or you need to go for EB2, there are three factors that drive the decision. The first factor is your evidence profile. Your evidence profile, and this is the most important factor. You see, EB1 demands documented proof that you are at the very top of your field and that you have sustained national or international acclaim. However, NIW requires proof that your work matters to the United States at national level, even if you are not a household name in your field. So this distinction is actually very, very important. EB1 requires that you have attained, you have risen to the very top of your field, not that you are just an accomplished professional, but you are among the small percentage of people who have risen, truly risen to the top of their field. However, NIW requires a proof that your work matters to the United States at national level, even if you are not a household name. So the first factor that should determine your decision is your profile, the evidence in your profile. Now, the second factor is the visa bulletin rather and priority dates. EB1 is a first preference immigrant visa category, and it is current for most nationalities, including Nigeria. And it also means that you can get a green card faster if you go for EB1. EB2 is a second preference immigrant visa, And sometimes it can carry significant backlogs depending on your country of birth. If you are from India, for example, there is a strong or a very long backlog in EB-2. If you are from China, there is a backlog for EB-2 as well. So a strong NIW profile may still be slower than a borderline EB-1 simply due to queue position. So when it comes to EB-1, if you go for EB-1, for example, most often than not, EB-1 is current, except for a very few countries where it is not current, and that includes India and China. But EB-2 most often than not carries a backlog. EB-2 only became current recently when about 75 countries were actually banned. So that is one of the decisions that actually made EB-2 to be current. So if you are trying to decide whether you need to go for EB-1 or EB-2, the three factors that need to determine your decision is your profile, the evidence in your profile, number two, the visa bulletin and the priority date, and number three, your risk tolerance and your evidence strength. You see, filing EB-1A with thin evidence invites a RFE or a denial. Then you rebuild the NIW case from scratch. But a well-argued NIW with strong Danazar framing will consistently outperform a weak EB-1A. Never file to the higher bar, hoping the officer won't notice the gaps. You see, what people do sometimes is that their EB-1 case is borderline, and then instead of strengthening their profile, they decide to file anyway, and then they begin to pray and pray and pray and pray. No, why not strengthen your profile and then go for EB-1? Or if your profile is not strong enough, go for EB-2. You could also use the hybrid strategy. Strong candidates sometimes qualify for EB-1 and EB-2. In that scenario, file EB-1A if the evidence is genuinely there. A current priority date is worth a lot. But if step 2 of Kazarian is thin, a clean NIW wins every time. I've seen clients and I've seen people file for EB-1 and EB-2 at the same time. If you believe that your case is very strong, and then you can go for EB-1. But if you are not very sure, you could do both as well, filing for EB-1 and EB-2 at the same time. Now, let's talk about the decision framework. How do you decide to go for EB-1 or EB-2? We'll look at the factors that determines EB-1 or EB-2. You're filing for EB-1 or your EB-2. So ask yourself this question: are you at the top of your field? Genuinely. If you're at the top of your field, then you go for EB-1. If you are not, but your work serves the national interest, then go for EB-2. The EB-1A has a very high objective external recognition standard, but the EB-2 NIW has a moderate merit plus impact argument. Now let's talk about advanced degree requirement. You don't need advanced degree for EB-1, but you need advanced degree for EB-2, except you go for the exceptional ability path in EB-2, or you have a bachelor's degree plus 5 years of experience in a particular field. Concerning labor certification is not required for EB-1A, and it is waived when it comes to EB-2 NIW. What then is the legal framework for EB-1A? It is a Kazarian two-step. What that means is that there are 10 criteria in EB-1A and then you need to meet at least 3 of them. After meeting the 3 criteria, that is, it means that you have passed the first step. Then the officer goes to the second step, which is the analysis of the entire document, the entire petition, to see and determine whether you are at the very top of your field. However, for EB-2 NIW, you only need Danaza 3 prongs. And what are those 3 prongs in Danaza? That your work has substantial merit and national importance, that you are well positioned to advance your work, and that on balance, it will be in the national interest, the US national interest, to waive the labor certification, for example. Now, let's talk about priority date. Currently, EB-1 is current for Nigeria and many countries all over the world. Second preference, EB-2 is also current, and there is a backlog for few countries in the world. Now, best profile fit for EB-1A, awardees, cited researchers, top earners, people who have performed in leading and critical roles for organizations with a distinguished reputation, people who have published papers in high volume, or published papers that have been highly cited, or published papers in top journals in their field. So EB-2 best profiles or easier profiles are profiles in STEM field, profile in health sector, profile concerning policy making, and educators as well. If you stay with me, I'm going to teach you practically here how to craft a very strong proposed endeavor for your EB-2. Now, petition anchor. How do you anchor your petition in EB-1? You anchor it around your strongest criterion plus a holistic totality to show that you have risen to the very top of your field. But as far as EB-2 is concerned, your petition is anchored around your proposed endeavor. That is why I said that the proposed endeavor is the foundation of a strong EB-2 case as far as NIW is concerned. RFE risk if weak. There is high RFE, especially in step 2 final merit determination. I've seen recently a rise in RFE in EB-1 and a rise in NOID, that is notice of intention to deny, from USCIS in EB-1. Why? Because people with borderline cases, people with borderline profiles, because of the backlog, are going for EB-1A, while they will have been better going for EB-2 NIW. The RFA risk is moderate as far as EB-2 is concerned. Most time, what is challenged is prong 3, that whereby you need to show that it will be in the US best interest to waive the labor certification, because the labor certification was put there to protect Americans' jobs. So you want to show the USCIS officer that what you will bring to the US is more important than them trying to protect 1 or 2 American jobs. Now let's talk about EB-1A right now. Do you have any questions so far? I've spoken about the framework that you need to use to determine whether to go for EB-1 or EB-2. Now, if you have any question, just put it in the chat before I continue. Okay, there is no question, so let us continue. By the way, if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell as I do webinars on different aspects of EB-1 and EB-2 every week. Let's talk about EB-1. Now, as I said earlier on, if your profile is very strong and you believe that you have risen to the very top of your field, then I would like you to go for EB-1A. There are two steps in EB-1. The first step is the threshold criteria, and the second step is the final merit determination. What is expected of you in the first step? That is, in the first step of analysis, you need to meet at least 3 out of 10 USCIS criteria. The evidence must be individually qualified, and it will be objectively assessed. So each criterion in the first step will be objectively assessed. The officer evaluates the prima facie case. That is, they look at the evidence. If the evidence meets the plain language of the regulation. So my advice is for you, do not inflate weak evidence here, because USCIS USCIS officers can smell fraud from afar. So if you misrepresent the evidence or you engage in fraud, you are actually destroying your immigration future in the US. Because if USCIS determines fraud or misrepresentation as far as your case is concerned, you may as well forget about immigrating to the US, because this is something that they take very, very seriously, and they punish. USCIS punishes fraud and misrepresentation. And once they have flagged your profile as a fraudulent profile, as someone that misrepresents the evidence, you will just see that you will just be applying, and then your cases will be denied for one reason or the other. They may not tell you that in the subsequent denials, but your profile must have been flagged. So the first step is very necessary to go to the second step. If you don't meet 3 criteria, then you cannot be moved to the second step. Now, what happens at the second step? You see, EB-1 is like a football match where 2 teams are playing and they draw. So once they draw, then you go to extra time. The extra time is step 2, where the final merit determination is being carried out. And what happens at these steps? At this step, rather, there is a holistic evaluation of all evidence together. At this step, the USCIS officer will evaluate all the pieces of evidence together to determine whether you are among the small percentage of people who have risen to the very top of their field, and to determine whether you have risen to the very, very top of your field. And then the officer asks the question, does the totality of the evidence show extraordinary ability? Does the totality of the evidence show that you have sustained national or international acclaim? Sustain means continued, continuous, something that has happened over a period of time. Now, there is no definitive number of year on this sustain, but in my experience, what I've seen that USCIS expect is at least 3 years of continuous achievement, 3 years of continuous recognition in your field. Now, the officer asks the question, does this person is among the peers or the people at the very top of their field? And at this step, this second step, the officer compares you, the petitioner, to the field's highest level. That is, they look at people who are at the highest level in your field and see, based on your achievement and based on the evidence, the pieces of evidence that you have presented, if you are among the people who have actually risen to the very top of your field. And this is where I've seen most petitions fail. You see, meeting 3 criteria out of 10 criteria is not that difficult. But showing USCIS that you are at the very top of the field, it is a tug of war. That is where most petitions fail. This is where most denials actually happen. And this is where the narrative argument wins. Your petition, your EB-1 case, need to tell a story. in such a way that when the officer is reading your story, the story leads the officer to believe that this person is more likely than not to be at the top of their field. And remember, the standard of adjudication here is the preponderance of evidence. What is the preponderance of evidence in law? That is, it means that your evidence must be 51% more likely than not to be correct and to be true and to say what you're trying to say. So, if the officer believes that you are 51% more likely to be extraordinary or to have risen to the very top of your field, according to the law, they are supposed to approve the petition. So you need to present USCIS with overwhelming evidence that shows that you are really at the top of your field. And do not allow your strongest evidence to be buried in amongst the weakest evidences. No, lead the petition with your strongest evidence in such a way that the USCIS officer sees at the beginning of your petition that this person is more likely to be at the top of the field than not. Now, let us examine. Someone is saying here that what are the chances of eligibility for an entrepreneur from Ghana for EB-1? Now, it depends on your profile. It depends on your profile. You see, if you're an entrepreneur that is leading an organization that has a distinguished reputation, you could actually claim that. You could actually claim that criterion. If you're an entrepreneur that has been published, that the media in Ghana, they have written a lot of articles about you, that shows, that is one of the things that will show that you are a person of extraordinary ability. You are not an obscure entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur that has gotten awards, national awards, or awards from organizations that have been recognized, then you can claim that criterion. If you are an entrepreneur that has scholarly article or that has been called to join the work of others at hackathon, at entrepreneurial endeavors or entrepreneurial competitions, then you can claim one of the criterion. So I need to see your CV. I will need to consult with you to know your profile, to know your chances of getting approved. So now let's talk about the all 10 USCIS criteria. You remember that you need to meet only 3 here amongst these 10 to move to the second step. So if you don't meet 3, then USCIS will issue you a RFE, that is a request for evidence. But if you meet it, then USCIS goes to the second step to determine whether you are at the very top of your field. So the first criterion is receipt of national or international awards or prizes for excellence in your field. That is, if you have received awards from organizations in your field or associations in your field that show that you are really a person of excellence, or these awards were given because of excellence in your field or some innovations that you brought up, then you can meet this criterion. The second criterion is membership in organizations that require outstanding achievement from their members. There are organizations that you cannot just join. There are organizations that there are some organizations you can only pay and then join. But there are some that will require that you have outstanding achievement. Maybe you made some major scientific contributions, or maybe you had some innovations that have advanced your field. And then, so once USCIS sees that this is an exclusive association, this is an elite association, this is an association that you don't just need to pay to join, but you need to have some concrete achievement, outstanding achievement before you could be admitted as a member, then USCIS can concede or accept this criterion. The third criterion I'd like to talk about is media coverage or publish materials or article about you and your work. The articles must be about you and your work, and these articles must be in major publications, in major journals, in major newspapers rather, before this criteria could be met. The fourth one is judging the work of others in your field. Maybe you have served as a journal peer reviewer, or you have sat on grant panels, you have been part of judging competition, then this can serve and can help you meet this criteria. The fifth one is original contribution of major significance. If you have made original contributions in your field that others are using or that has significantly advanced your field, then you can claim this criterion. The sixth criterion is authorship of scholarly articles in major journals or major media. Now, and USCIS has some requirements for you to meet for an article to be considered a scholarly article. The article must be written for a specific audience, and it must be published in a journal. The seventh criterion is artistic exhibitions or showcases, and these mainly for people in the arts, artists, people that draw, and that have to do with exhibitions, or people that in the arts field. So if your innovations or your work has been displayed at artistic exhibitions or showcases, then you can claim this criterion. The eighth criterion is performing in a leading or a critical role for organizations with a distinguished reputation. So you could either perform in a leading role or a critical role for an organization with a distinguished reputation. If you have performed in such positions, then you could claim this criterion. The ninth criterion is commanding a high salary or remuneration in relations to your peers. And to meet this criteria, you need to provide USCIS with benchmark data. That is, you need to provide USCIS with salary data, with salary surveys that show that you have earned significantly higher than your peers in your field. And the 10th criterion is commercial success in the performing act, that is box office and sales and so on and so forth. So let's look at EB2. Remember, for EB1, you only need to meet 3 criteria out of 10, and that is the first step. Then you move to the second step, where the final merit determination is conducted. And when you pass that final merit determination, your petition will be approved. Now let's talk about EB-2 NIW. So EB-2 National Interest Waiver, we'll talk about the DINASA 3-prong, advanced degree, and then proposed US endeavor. And here I'm going to practically show you how to come up with a very strong proposed endeavor using AI. So before you can go for EB-2 NIW, you need to come up with a proposed endeavor. You need to come up with a proposed endeavor. And before you even come up with the proposed endeavor, there are 2 pathways to EB-2 NIW. The first pathway is the pathway of advanced degree, and the second pathway is the pathway of exceptional ability. Now let me focus here on the pathway of advanced degree. That is, you need to have an advanced degree to be eligible, a master's or a PhD, or you could have a bachelor's degree plus 5 years of experience in a particular field. If that is you, then you are qualified to apply for EB-2. Then after you are qualified to apply for EB-2, after your eligibility is ascertained, then the next thing you need to do is to come up with a proposed endeavor. What is a proposed endeavor? A proposed endeavor is a particular activity, a specific activity that you want to do in the US. Is it research that you want to do? Is it a business that you want to create in the US? Or do you want to research or come up with a cure for cancer, or help students or people with or autism, or whatever solution that you want to bring or you want to create, or whatever problem you want to solve for America, and that is what will make up your proposed endeavor. So remember the order: eligibility. You need to be eligible by having a master's or a PhD, or by having a bachelor's degree plus 5 years of experience in a particular field. That is the first part in EB-2. Or you could go through the route of exceptional ability. Then after your eligibility requirement is met, then you come up with a proposed endeavor, which is a specific activity that you would like to carry out in the United States, which is a specific problem that you want to solve for America, which is a specific solution that you want to create for the country. Then once you determine that, and I'm going to teach you how to come up with a proposed endeavor, then you need to show USCIS that your proposed endeavor has substantial merit and national importance. You need to show that your work has substantial intrinsic merit, that your work has broad societal benefit, not just your employer, that your work will not just benefit your employer, but it will benefit the nation at large. So you need to talk about the scope of your impact. The scope of your impact should be national, not local. It should be national. So once you're able to do that, then you move to the second prong, which is to show that, okay, this is what I want to do. Then this is what qualifies me. This is what positions me well to advance what I said I want to do. And in doing that, USCIS looks at your education, your skills, and your record of success in similar or related endeavor. Okay, you say that you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to create a business. Have you created a business before that has succeeded? Do you have experience teaching before? Do you have experience doing this thing that you want to do in the US before? So USCIS looks at that. The second thing that USCIS looks at to determine whether you are well positioned to advance your proposed endeavor is they look at your progress, the progress that you have already made on your proposed endeavor. Okay, you want to do XYZ. What have you done to advance this thing? What progress have you made already? Then they look at the interest of relevant parties in your proposed endeavor. Okay, is the US interested? Is there any organization that is interested? Is there any federal organization that is interested? Are there associations that are interested in your proposed endeavor? So in determining whether you're well qualified or well positioned rather to advance your proposed endeavor, USCIS looks at four things. Number one, your education, your skills, and your record of success in similar or related endeavor. Number two, they look at the progress that you have already made concerning this proposed endeavor. Number three, they look at the interest of relevant parties in your proposed endeavor. And number four, they look at your plan for future activities concerning your proposed endeavor. Okay. So now the third prong is to show that the benefit of waiving the labor certification outweighs the job offer requirement. So you need to show that the national interest overrides labor market test. You also need to talk about the urgency or uniqueness of your contribution and you need to show how how your proposed endeavor aligns with federal agency or the US policy. Then you need to demonstrate or convince the officer why US can't just hire a domestic worker. So you need to, in a nutshell, you need to show USCIS that this is the contribution that you are bringing to America, and then it is worth waiving the labor certification for you to be given a green card to make this contribution. Now, let's look at how to craft a winning proposed endeavor. What is a proposed endeavor? A proposed endeavor is a specific, forward-looking description of the work you will do in the United States. It is not your resume. It is not your past. It must answer the question, what will you do? Who benefits? Why does the US need it? So your proposed endeavor needs to answer the question, what will you do? Who benefits? And why does the US need this particular thing that you want to do? So what do you need to include in your proposed endeavor? Your specific work in the US, it needs to be specific, not vague. The problem your work will address, who benefits and how broadly will they benefit from your work. You need to add concrete deliverables such as publications, tools, and policy. You need to also add timeline and US-based execution plan. And you also need to connect it to national priorities such as NIH, NSF, CDC, and so on and so forth. So why does the proposed endeavor win cases? It anchors prong 2 because it shows that you are positioned. It anchors prong 3 because it shows why the waiver is justified. It gives the officer a specific thing to approve. It prevents vague boilerplate denials. Your proposal endeavor connects your background to US strategy. It makes expert letters specific and credible, and it distinguishes you from every other petition. What then are the common mistakes to avoid in writing your proposal endeavor? Don't let your proposal endeavor be generic. For example, I will continue my research. No. It must not be employer specific. It must not be petitioner centric. Some mistakes that people still make when writing proposal endeavor is that they don't show any connection to US national interest or US national priorities. Your proposal endeavor fails to name specific beneficiaries. There is a missing urgency or uniqueness argument. Your proposed endeavor conflicts with other petition sections, and your proposed endeavor is a boilerplate proposed endeavor copied from a template. So your proposed endeavor needs to be specific. Your proposed endeavor needs to be specific. Now, I'm going to show you here how to come up with a proposed endeavor. Now, let's look at few proposed endeavor and why some are strong and why some are weak. So this is a weak proposed endeavor. I will continue conducting research in public health and contribute to the advancement of medical knowledge in the United States. My work will benefit American patients and support ongoing specific progress. Why does this proposed endeavor fail? Why is it weak? There is no specific work named. There is no identified beneficiaries. There is no US national priorities cited. It could describe any researcher anywhere. There is no urgency. There is no uniqueness argument. Now, let's look at the second one. I will lead a multi-site clinical trial evaluating AI-assisted FGMC complication screening in federally qualified health centers. serving African diaspora communities in 6 US states, directly addressing the CDC's identified gap in care for the estimated 513,000 at-risk women. Why does this petition win? Why is it strong, this proposed endeavor? There is a specific work named, there is trial, there is screening tool. It names the beneficiaries who will benefit, 513,000 at-risk women. The federal priority is cited also, CDC gap. There is geographic scope, 6 US states. There is also urgency and uniqueness, which are both clear. So now let's together look and try to come up with some proposed endeavor. I'll share my screen with you now. So we turn to AI and then come up with some proposed endeavor. So I'll share my screen. So I will give you a proposed endeavor for someone in the sciences and another one for someone in the arts. For someone in the humanities. I'm sharing my screen with you. I'm trying to share my screen with you guys. Yeah, just give me a sec. Let me quickly. So I'm trying to share my screen and then I don't know why this thing is misbehaving. Just be patient. And then I will teach you how to come up with a strong proposed endeavor. Okay, good. So I was able to do that. Okay, great. Thank you for your patience. Okay, good. So this is my screen. So I'm using Claude here. Let me know if you can see my screen, please. Can you see my screen? Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, you can see my screen, right? Okay, yes. Okay, Esther says yes. Okay, so how do you come up with the proposed endeavor? So let's start with a profile in the sciences. So this is just a sample profile. It's a fictional profile, it's not. So I'll say hello, Claude. I'm trying to apply for EB-2 NIW. Come up with 4 very strong, compelling, and highly specific proposed endeavors based on the CV I gave you. Boom. So I gave Claude a CV, and then he's now suggesting some proposed endeavor to me. Here are 4 strong, compelling, and highly specific proposed endeavors tailored to Dr. Okafor's background, framed to meet the EB-2 NIW standards, substantial merit, national importance, and that is well positioned to advance the endeavor. Okay, proposing that developing and deploying nanomaterial-based filtration membrane to eliminate heavy metal contamination in US rural and tribal drinking water systems. So this is a proposed endeavor that is laser focused, specific, and very clear. And Claude here goes ahead to give me the reason. Dr. Okafor proposes to advance the development and real-world deployment of nanofiber filtration membranes, specifically engineered to remove lead, arsenic, and other heavy metals from drinking water in underserved rural and tribal communities across the United States. So here we know that his endeavor is to do research. Who is going to benefit from this research? We also know who is going to benefit from this research. And we know that there are some US agencies that are actually backing up these kinds of research. He's published research in environmental engineering science and his ongoing work at the Texas Water Innovation Institute position him as one of the few researchers actively bridging laboratory nanomaterial science with field deployable low-cost systems. For example, this is second proposed endeavor, building AI-enabled real-time water quality monitoring infrastructure for aging US water systems. You see how specific the proposed endeavor is. Now, the third one, creating scalable, decentralized water purification solutions for climate vulnerable and disaster affected US communities. So you can see how specific these proposed endeavors are. Now, I'm going to tweak it a little and say, oh, thanks for your suggestions. These are quite strong endeavors. Can you please relate them to national priorities and agencies to show that these are matters that are of national importance. Boom. Absolutely. Yes, each endeavor expanded with specific national priorities, federal legislation, and relevant agencies that establish their national importance, critical for satisfying the national framework. Um, this endeavor directly, no, it's not doing what I want it to say. You are not doing what I want you to say to do. You are not doing what I want you to do. Rewrite the endeavors to integrate those things I told you. Oh, you're right. Developing nano material based filtration membrane to eliminate heavy metal contamination in the water system. No, it's not doing what I want. You could say something like this. Developing and deploying nanomaterial-based filtration membranes to eliminate heavy metal contamination in U.S. rural and tribal drinking water system, and then add the federal priority here and the agencies interested here. Understood. You want a structured format where the title is followed by, yes, that's what I want. I want you to include those things in the proposed endeavor. Include them directly in the sentence of the proposed endeavor. Okay, so this is it. Is now doing what I want it to do. Developing and deploying nanomaterial-based filtration membranes to eliminate heavy metal contamination in U.S. rural and tribal drinking water system, a priority need identified by the EPA Office of Water. Okay, so here you can see that the proposed endeavor is very specific. We know the problem that he wants to solve, who is going to benefit, and is now also connected to a U.S. national priority. So that is how to craft a strong proposed endeavor. And here we have another example, building AI-enabled real-time water quality monitoring infrastructure for aging U.S. water systems, a critical national security and public health priority identified by CISA, the APA Water Security Initiative, and the White House National Cybersecurity Strategy supported by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law 55 billion water. So here you can see clearly that this is a strong, specific proposed endeavor that it has been connected to national priority. So now okay, thanks. Now let's look at another profile. That was a scientific CV, a CV from someone in the sciences. Now let me look at someone in the humanities. Here is another petitioner in the humanities. Come up with the three best proposed endeavors using the same framework as before. So here, for example, this is a profile of someone in the humanities. Proposed endeavor documenting and preserving the migration narrative and cultural memory of immigrant communities through digital storytelling, a national cultural preservation and social integration priority identified by the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Smithsonian Institution Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, and Institute of Museum and Library Services, aligned with the American Rescue Plan's investment in humanities infrastructure. Another one is advancing research on digital storytelling as a tool for immigrant youth integration, mental health, and civic belonging, a cross-cutting priority identified by the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement, the Department of Education, and the White House Task Force on New Americans under the Welcoming America Framework and the Biden-Harris Interagency Strategy on Immigrant Integration. Another one is building a national scholarly and community framework for understanding transnational identity formation in the US diaspora, a research priority supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Social Science Research Council, and the Department of Homeland Security Office of Immigration Statistics in the context of the most demographically diverse period in US history. So you can see how to come up with a strong, specific, and compelling proposed endeavor. Okay, so let me return to my slides as we close. So as we close, let's look at the biggest petition mistakes, EB-1 and EB-2. So for EB-1, that is confusing step 1 with step 2. That is meeting 3 criteria gets you to the table. Winning the final merit review is where most petitions die, and most attorneys don't prepare for it. For NIW, it is vague proposed endeavor. The most common NIW failure, I will continue my research, is not a proposed endeavor, it is a sentence. Now, for EB-1, weak or absent abstract letters. Letters must specifically analyze your evidence, not just praise you in EB-1. Generic letters can hurt more than help. For EB-2, copying templates. USCIS officers recognize boilerplate instantly. Your petition must be specific to your exact achievement, field, and case fact. Another mistake for EB-1 is no salary benchmarking data. For EB-1, salary evidence must be tied to national data, Kazarian compliant, and clearly documented with percentile analysis. Now, for EB-2, ignoring RFE risk architecture. You need to structure the petition to anticipate RFEs before filing, not after receiving one. Every exhibit must connect to a legal argument. So again, my name is Dr. Felix. I'm an immigration strategist, EB-1A and EB-2 expert, and currently have a 92% approval rate, 175 cases filed in 3 categories. Okay, if you have any questions, happy to answer your questions. Okay, it looks like there is no question. Okay, thank you very much. I will see you in another webinar. Till then, remember to make the rest of your life the best of your life. Bye for now.